A week before my parents' 40th anniversary, Mom called and said, "Your father and I don't want you at the dinner," I said. "Understood." Hours later, my sister Piper posted a family photo with the caption, "Family only." I hit like. Then I commented, "Congrats, mortgage and taxes are all yours now." 5 minutes later, the post vanished. I put my phone down. 30 minutes later, I had 30 missed calls. Mom, Dad, Piper, even relatives I barely heard from. They thought I was furious about being excluded. I wasn't, because the reason that comment terrified them had nothing to do with the anniversary. Before the night was over, Mom would accidentally reveal who they had promised the house to. My name is Erin Fenwick. I was 39, lived in Oak Park, Illinois, and worked in strategic procurement for a medical device company in Chicago. I made good money, not private jet money, enough to own a 2-bedroom condo, carry my own mortgage, save for retirement, and still help my parents when they needed it. My parents, Calvin and Joanne, lived in Naperville in the same 4-bedroom house where Piper and I had grown up. The house was worth somewhere around $650,000, but they still had a mortgage. 6 years earlier, they had refinanced to replace the roof, update the HVAC, and catch up on repairs they had postponed for too long. By the time Dad retired earlier than planned, they still owed roughly $200,000. They weren't broke. They had Social Security, Dad's pension, retirement savings, but losing his salary tightened everything for the first time. They started talking about downsizing. Mom hated the idea. "This is where the family comes," she kept saying, so I offered to help for a while. Every month, I transferred $1,250 into their household account. Once a year, I added another $3,000 toward property taxes, about $18,000 annually, over 4 years, roughly $72,000. I wasn't on the deed. I wasn't on the mortgage. Nobody promised me equity. I never asked for any. I thought I was helping my parents stay in a home they loved while they adjusted to retirement. Piper helped differently. She lived 10 minutes away with her husband, Wes, and their 2 kids. She stopped by constantly. She brought the grandchildren over. She helped Mom shop. She checked on Dad after appointments. Eventually, my family developed a simple story about us. Piper was the daughter who showed up. I was the daughter who wrote checks. I still called every week. I still visited twice a month. I still handled paperwork when Dad asked. But proximity counted more emotionally than anything I did from 40 miles away. I accepted that. What I didn't know was that almost a year before the anniversary party, my parents had changed their estate plan, and while I kept paying to help preserve the family home, they had already decided which daughter it would eventually belong to. The argument that eventually got me banned from the anniversary started 6 weeks earlier at a family cookout. Nothing dramatic happened at first. Dad was grilling. Mom was carrying food outside. Piper's kids were running through the yard. Then someone joked about how expensive everything had gotten. Piper laughed and said, "Well, some of us actually show up instead of just writing checks." I looked at her. "What's that supposed to mean?" She shrugged. "You know what I mean." "No, I don't." Piper set down her drink. "You act like paying for things makes you the responsible one." "I have never told Mom or Dad what to do with their house. You don't have to. Everyone knows you're the one paying." That irritated me because she had brought money into the conversation. Not me. Mom immediately stepped between us. "Enough." Later, when Piper had gone home, Mom pulled me aside. "You know she gets sensitive about money." "She brought up my money. You could have let it go." That was how conflict usually worked in my family. Piper got upset. I was expected to be mature enough not to respond. A few weeks later, she began organizing Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary dinner at an Italian restaurant. Private room. Around 25 people. Cousins, spouses, aunts, uncles. I assumed I was going. Then, 1 week before the dinner, Mom called. "Your father and I don't want you at the anniversary." I thought I had misheard her. What Piper is still upset about what happened. "So you're uninviting me for one night. We want everybody relaxed. Everybody except me." "Erin, don't make this harder." I ended the call and phoned Dad. He sounded tired before I even finished explaining. "Just let your mother have one peaceful night. By not being there, it's one dinner. I waited for him to say he disagreed with her. He didn't. So I said, "Understood. I won't come." I never mentioned the mortgage. I never threatened to stop helping. I didn't ask for the money I had already spent. I simply accepted that my parents had chosen Piper's comfort over my presence. What none of them knew was that one public caption would change the way I saw every payment I had made. And Piper was about to post it herself. The anniversary was Saturday night. I kept my promise and stayed home. I ordered dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and tried not to think about what 25 people were doing in a private room 40 miles away. Around 9:30, I checked my phone. Piper had posted a photo. Mom and Dad were standing in the center, smiling under a gold 40 sign. Piper and Wes were beside them. Their kids were in front. Around them were cousins, spouses, my aunt, my uncle, and relatives I hadn't seen in months. Then I read the caption. Family only. Finally everyone together for Mom and Dad's 40th. I stared at it longer than I should have. Mom had told me this was about keeping one evening peaceful. Dad had told me it was only one dinner. Piper had just turned my absence into something else. I wasn't the difficult daughter who had been temporarily excluded. According to her caption, I simply wasn't family. So I hit like, then I typed, "Congrats mortgage and taxes are all yours now." I posted it. No explanation, no dollar amounts. Then I opened my banking app. For 4 years, $1,250 had automatically transferred to Mom and Dad every month. I canceled the next transfer and everyone after it. The $3,000 I normally sent toward property taxes later in the year would stay in my account too. I did not touch their mortgage. I couldn't have if I wanted to. My name wasn't on it. I simply stopped volunteering my money. 5 minutes later. I refreshed the page. The entire anniversary post was gone. I laughed once, mostly from disbelief, and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. About half an hour later, I looked again. 30 missed calls, 9 from Piper, 7 from Mom, 6 from Dad, 3 from Wes. The rest from relatives who had apparently seen my comment before the photo disappeared. I answered Dad. He didn't say hello. What the hell was that comment? I thought it was clear. Tell me you didn't cancel the transfer. I canceled it. You can't just stop. I'm not on your mortgage. Dad? Mom's voice came through in the background. You're punishing us over one dinner. No, you told me not to attend. Piper publicly announced it was family only. I'm adjusting my role accordingly. That money has nothing to do with Piper. Then this should be simple. Mom was quiet. Then, frustrated. She said something she clearly hadn't meant to say. Piper is the one who'll have to deal with this house someday anyway. I sat up. What does that mean? Nobody answered, so I asked again. Why would Piper have to deal with the house? Dad finally answered. Your mother didn't mean it like that. Then tell me what she meant. Silence. I heard Mom say something I couldn't make out. Then Dad sighed. Last year. We updated our estate plan. I said nothing. If we still own this house when the second of us dies, Piper gets it. For a second. I honestly thought I had misunderstood him. The house, yes. And everything else. The rest is divided separately. I looked at the dark screen of my laptop. The house I had spent 4 years helping them keep. The property taxes I helped cover. The mortgage payment their retirement budget could manage more comfortably because of my monthly transfer. All of it suddenly had a different context. But there was one question that mattered more than the money. Does Piper know? Neither of them answered. Dad. Does Piper know? Mom finally said. Yes. That hurt more than the estate plan. How long? Almost a year. I did the math automatically. 11 months of transfers, another tax contribution, more than $16,000 since they had made the decision, Dad said. Erin, your help was for us, not Piper. I know, it's still our home. Exactly. And while you own it, the mortgage and taxes are yours too. Mom jumped in. We weren't asking you to buy your sister a house. No, you asked me to help preserve one, then decided who would receive it and never told me. That's our estate plan. It's private. You're right. That stopped her. You can leave Piper the house. I won't fight you for 1 square foot. Dad exhaled like he thought the argument was ending. It wasn't. But I'm not spending another dollar preserving it for her. Mom's voice sharpened. So this is about inheritance? No. Give Piper every dollar you own if that's what you want. I'm just not paying for the gift, Dad said. After everything we've done for you, I'm not asking for anything back. That mattered to me. What I already paid was help. I meant it when I gave it. I only want the next dollar to be mine to decide. Then Piper called again. Mom added her to the conversation. Piper started immediately. You're seriously doing this because of one Facebook caption? I ignored that. How long have you known about the house? She hesitated. Mom and Dad mentioned it last year, so you knew. I didn't know how much you were paying. That isn't what I asked. Another pause. Yes, I knew. And there it was. Piper hadn't just posted family only. She had posted it knowing that the sister outside the photograph was still helping pay to preserve the house she expected to inherit. Piper was the first to defend herself. I didn't know you were paying that much. How much did you think I was paying? I don't know. A few hundred here and there. Then maybe you should have asked before posting family only. That caption wasn't about money. I know. That's why it told me more than a bill ever could, Mom cut in. Erin, at least keep helping through the end of the year. We already budgeted around that money. No, just a few more months. This month is already paid. After that, you need a new budget. Dad sounded furious. You're leaving us with $18,000 a year to replace. I'm not leaving you with anything. I'm stopping a voluntary contribution. So what are we supposed to do? Keep the house, sell it, use retirement money, ask Piper. Whatever works for you. Then I added, that decision belongs to you. My paycheck doesn't. 2 days later. Piper called me again. Her tone was different. Mom and Dad had apparently sat down with her and Wes and explained the actual numbers. The mortgage itself was around $1,550 a month. Property taxes were more than $11,000 a year. Then there was insurance, maintenance, utilities, and everything a 30-year-old house eventually needs, Piper said. I didn't realize keeping that house cost that much. I almost laughed. That's exactly the problem. She and Wes couldn't replace what I had been contributing. They had their own mortgage, 2 children, car payments, and normal expenses. They offered Mom and Dad around $350 a month. Helpful, not enough. For the next few months, my parents covered the difference themselves. They stayed current on every bill. Nobody lost the house. Nobody went hungry. They simply started pulling more from retirement and cutting back elsewhere. Dad complained once that I was forcing them into this. I said, I'm not forcing you to do anything. I stopped volunteering for one expense. That ended the conversation quickly. Eventually. Their financial advisor asked why their monthly withdrawals had increased so much. Mom told him. He ran the numbers. Keeping a nearly 3,000 square foot house meant higher withdrawals, high property taxes, ongoing maintenance, and less flexibility later. Downsizing would improve their retirement picture immediately, at first. Dad resisted. Then Piper surprised everyone. Maybe keeping the house just because I might inherit it someday doesn't make sense. That was the first sensible thing anyone had said about the property in months. For 4 years, everyone had called it the family home. Once my money disappeared, they finally had to call it what it actually was, an expensive house owned by 2 retirees who were free to keep it as long as they were willing to pay for it themselves. 5 months after the anniversary, Mom and Dad listed the Naperville house, not because the bank forced them, not because I threatened them. They simply looked at the numbers long enough to admit they no longer wanted to spend that much of retirement maintaining 3,000 square feet. The house sold for a little over $630,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and closing costs, they still walked away with substantial equity. They bought a smaller 2-bedroom ranch and put enough down that their monthly housing costs dropped dramatically. For the first time in years, Dad stopped complaining about property taxes. There was one obvious consequence. The specific house Piper had expected to inherit was gone. Nobody took it from her. Mom and Dad sold property they still owned. A few weeks after closing, Piper asked me to lunch. I knew about the house, she said. I should have realized you might want to know while you were still helping them keep it. Yes. She looked uncomfortable, and the family-only caption was stupid. You posted it knowing one member of the family had specifically been told not to come. I know, that was enough. Mom's first apology was worse. I'm sorry the anniversary got so out of hand. I said nothing. 2 months later, she tried again. We should have told you when we changed the estate plan. You were helping us keep the house. And we let you continue without information that might have changed your decision. That apology I could accept. Dad admitted something too. I told myself your support and the inheritance were separate. They were legally separate. He nodded, but not emotionally. No, I never asked what their new estate plan said after they moved. I didn't care anymore. If they wanted Piper to inherit more, someday, that was their choice. What changed was that nobody expected me to finance that choice in advance. And once the house was gone, something else disappeared with it. The assumption that I would always be the daughter who quietly paid while everyone else decided what counted as family. A year later, Mom and Dad were comfortable in the smaller house. Piper still lived nearby. I still lived in Oak Park. Nothing dramatic happened because I stopped paying. Everyone simply learned to live inside the choices they made. Mom no longer called and said, "We need you to handle this." Now she asked, "Would you be willing to look at something for us?" That difference mattered. Piper invited me to a summer barbecue with a text that said, "I'd like you there if you want to come." I went. We never pretended the anniversary hadn't happened. We just stopped repeating it. The strangest part was that I never cared who inherited more after that. My parents were free to leave their house, money, or anything else to whoever they wanted. But I finally understood that their estate plan and my paycheck were two different decisions. They were free to decide who inherited their house. I was free to decide who inherited my paycheck. If your family excluded you while depending on your money, would you keep paying?